Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to UU's Get Social, creating content that is seen, liked, and shared. We are excited to share this program with you today. We have a very packed presentation with 4 fabulous presenters, one of whom will be on her way soon. And we have a lot of things we'd love to share with you, and we want to reserve as much time as possible at the end for questions and comments. So we ask that if you have a question or a comment that comes up for you during the presentation and you get excited about sharing it, just jot it down so we can share it at the end with our time for Q&A. Your presenters today are UUA staff people. Jill Goddard, our Public Relations Director. Jennifer Toth Clary, the campaign manager for Standing on the Side of Love. She'll be here shortly. Today's a busy day for all of these folks here with our exciting news about marriage equality. Here's Jennifer, yay! Excellent. Also, Chris Walton, who is editor of the UU World, and I'm Sarah Gibb Millspaugh, the UUA's Outreach Associate for Digital Ministries. We produce and curate a variety of content for Unitarian Universalism. Jill is a producer and curator of the UUA.org homepage and news and press releases, along with the team from the Office of Public Witness and Information, and also UUA Facebook and Twitter accounts. Jennifer works with Standing on the Side of Love, and the website, the Facebook, the Twitter. Chris with UU World Magazine, which also includes a fabulous brand new website, and Facebook and Twitter and Tumblr and Flickr accounts.
And print.
And, oh yes. We're old school here too. And I work on the UUA.org section Beliefs and Principles, which explains Unitarian Universalism and who we are, what we do, why it matters. And I'm also on the team that works with our homepage. So I will pass the mic to Jennifer, who will get us started with some questions to consider.
Would you do the first 2 slides, Sarah?
Okay.
I'm still catching my breath.
She is still catching her breath. It is hard work to stand on the side of love on a day like today.
Today was running on the side of love.
Running on the side of love, yes. Okay, everyone. Pull out a pen and a paper, or your tablet, or your phone, or something you can write with. I want you to think about what was the most memorable or powerful UU story, image, or video that you encountered online. First thing that comes in your head. You don't need to review every single one. What's the most memorable or powerful UU story, image, or video that you have encountered online? Write down a couple notes about what you remember about it. Okay, and think now about how did you find it? How did you stumble upon it? Did you seek it out? Did it just show up in your news feed? How did you find it? So I invite you now to turn and tell your neighbor about it. And when I ring this bell, I invite you to come back and turn your attention to the group. But turn and talk for a couple of minutes with your neighbor about your effective content, your powerful content that you stumbled upon.
Okay. Is it, and it's ready to go inside? I like first half.
Okay. So you talked about what you found and what was, you're talking about your powerful image, your powerful content, how you found it. And so let's think a little bit about what made it effective. Why was it effective? Well, if you're anything like the typical human being, there were several reasons why it might be effective. Perhaps it was interesting. And perhaps more personally, it connected somehow with your identity, with a sense of who you are, what you value, what you think is important in life, how you position yourself in relationship to our broader culture or to different cultures that you are a part of, how you position yourself with that. connects with your spirituality, your politics, those aspects of your identity. Or else maybe it just struck an emotional chord. Maybe it was just like, yeah, exactly what I needed to hear right then. And in some way it just felt right on. So much of how we engage with social media and whether we like it, whether we share it, it has to do with something that's not, it's not a clear science. It's not just, you have A plus B plus C and somebody's going to like it and share it and it's going to go viral. It really has to do with the moment. It comes down to the moment that it finds the individual people in who are seeing and sharing that content. Also, timely. Timely is another reason that makes content effective. So here are some things that we'll cover today, and Jen will give us a little roadmap.
Hello, everyone. Today feels like running on the side of love, dancing on the side of love, leaping on the side of love. Was anyone in the lunchtime worship today? All right, yeah. And I think you can find it online, too, if you weren't there. It was pretty exciting. So we're also social media-ing on the side of love. And I just tweeted, actually, as soon as I got in. So hashtag #YouUseGetSocial if you want to follow along the conversation. And here's what we're going to cover today. Goals, audience, and content, and the relationship between the three of these. So by a show of hands, how many of you have really given some time to think about what are your goals for being on social media? Okay, so a few. And if you don't mind, a show of hands, how many of you are following Standing on the Side of Love on social media? Okay, so a good portion. So you all are part of my audience for social media here, so hopefully we're going to be learning together. So we're focusing on UU congregations and groups, and that can really be however you define it here today. Maybe you all work for a state advocacy network, a church committee, maybe you do some coalition work and beyond. So all of this can be applicable to how you use social media. So you can think about whatever goals, audience, and content are sort of most relevant for you. And if you're an individual who wants to promote our faith online, maybe you're a blogger, a graphic designer, or a regular social media user, it's our hope that you get something out of this too. So now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Jill Goddard, who is going to share a little bit more about your goals.
Thanks, Jen. I was told to speak closer to the mic, so I'm going to do that. So we want to cover what are your goals. Before content can begin, before you start communicating with the world, if you're creating a Facebook page, a Twitter feed, you really want to take some time, take a step back, breathe, and set some goals. Your goals can, from if you're working for an organization or you're promoting your church's page, you should be setting your goals based on the organization's goals. All communication goals come from the organization's goals. We look at our 7 principles to determine what our goals might be. We look at what the public witness goals are, advancing, LGBTQ, marriage equality. We had a great big win today. So those are how we determine what our goals are. Goals are, the best goals are called SMART goals. They are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So when you're planning your goals, think about that. I'm just gonna throw all these up here. These aren't goals. These are themes for goals. So your goal might center around membership growth. They might center around creating visibility for your congregation, or a visibility on a particular social justice issue you might be working on. And information is up here, but I have a caution about information, because information and communication are often interchangeable, or people use them interchangeably. And so I have a quote here from Sidney Harris, who was a journalist, and he said, "The two words information and communication are often used interchangeably, but they signify quite different things. Information is giving out, and communication is getting through. So I really want you to think about that, and when we're talking about communication, right now we're in a really amazing time where it's not TV ads or radio ads or newspaper ads that just sort of share information, but we can really create engagement and dialogue through social media, what we're talking about here today. So social media really has the opportunity to build relationships, to create community, to deepen our experiences, and really to create a spiritual experience 7 days a week and not just on Sunday. So by the time that, again, from a congregational perspective, by the time you arrive on Sunday morning, you are already inspired, you are already jazzed, and you're already excited to share and worship. And that's really what social media can do for you. And I'm going to pass it back to Sarah now.
So social media builds a relationship. And in a previous workshop that I did on websites, I talked about how the user experience of the social media or the website is already building a relationship with your UU group. So folks are already connecting with you. But how do you want to be intentional about this? Who do you want to connect with? Who is your audience? People come to identify with us because they have a relationship with us. And social media is an amazing outreach tool. We've always heard that word of mouth is the best way for people to find a connection with a faith community. But this amplifies it so much with social media. You can just be sharing things you like, doing things that fit with your identity, and you are forming other people's impressions of Unitarian Universalism. A couple of years ago, I was amazed to get a Facebook message from an old high school friend of mine who I wasn't in close contact with. I wouldn't have been regularly corresponding with her, except I was her Facebook friend. And she said, "Sarah, I have to thank you for doing something. You never even knew you did it. You introduced me to Unitarian Universalism. I have now joined the UU Fellowship of Fairbanks, and I have found my people. I have found my spiritual home. Thank you." It was amazing. It was amazing that what I showed and shared on social media did that. But if you're setting out to create content, you can't just count on it naturally reaching the people that you want it to reach. You can't just count on it getting put out there. So it's very important to be able to develop content in relationship with your audience and with your goals. So you can fine-tune, you can target it. So say if you have a goal to become a real haven for a haven and kind of base for progressive spiritual community in your area, then you want to reach those spiritual progressives. They become part of your audience. So you find out, what are they interested in? What kind of content can we develop for this audience? You develop your content in relationship. And you also want to know your audience. Who do you think of as your audience for your congregation's social media? Just shout some things out. I'll repeat them in the microphone. Who's in your audience? I'm sorry, young adults. Newcomers. People in the neighborhood. People who are curious. Local college kids. Military. LGBTQ. Everybody in the congregation, that's an audience too. Traditional media. Yes. We have a lot of different audiences. So who do you want to build a relationship with? That is a question that comes from your mission and your vision as a congregation and the strategy that you want to employ. Your audience, as we heard just now, it's always broader than your current members or even your current followers or likers on Facebook. People see what other people share. So, and what you put into your social media can be showing up in all kinds of people's feeds all over the world based on a network of friendships. So you won't naturally gather the audience you know unless you know how to put intention into it. And Chris Walton will talk about some of the intentional ways that the UU world has sought to reach different audiences.
So one way that a magazine is like a congregation that wants to reach out to a new audience is, well, you don't personally know the new audience yet, right? So I don't know the people that aren't reading the magazine. You don't know the people who aren't in your church. So a few years ago when we were developing UU World Magazine's first website, we thought, well, we have to think about these audiences that we can finally reach online that aren't already members of churches. I mean, we know how to get a magazine to members. Your church has your names, it sends them to the UUA, and voila, you get a magazine. But that's not true for people who are trying to reach online. So we came up with a method that was incredibly fun and that helps take the abstract notion of, college kids or LGBT people or, any group like that and said, let's turn these into fictional but specific people. And so we made some posters. We identified four categories of people that we thought were important for our project. And then we invented at least two fictional people who were going to be these characters. And I'll show you some pictures of them in a second. But let me read these here. What helped us do was then ask all of our questions about the content we were making. We could ask them about the people we had made up. We could say, well, how would, William Jenkins, Francis Hopper the 19th, how would that person engage with this? How would someone else engage with it? So we wanted to know, who are they? What's important to them? What do they need from us? Why would we matter to them? Like, what about what we're up to could possibly matter to that person? And then, what social media platforms do they actually use? And the answers to these kinds of things are a little bit different for each group. And it really helped us test our own assumptions. If we were all, let's say that we were all completely committed to the morning newspaper, couldn't figure out why would anyone read news online, well, then we don't know anything about people who would use news online. We had to come up with a story to help us understand how people would use that. So you want to look at your content through their eyes. And we found that this poster project was a really fun way to do it. Don't squint, don't try to read these. I just want to give you a sense of what these were. So we just created user personas, and we went and just randomly downloaded some stock images of people, and we invented names, and we just made up some characteristics about them. And we had some fun with it, but the important part is, down at the bottom, we asked, why do I need uuworld.org? Now, for some of the personas we came up with, we didn't have a great answer for that person, right? And that was instructive. Like, we may not actually have anything that we're currently saying that would resonate with that audience, but we have it in our mind, we should be communicating with them. And we put the poster versions of these all around our office. And so as we were doing different versions of our website design, we would ask things about them. We would ask, does this term make sense to all of these different groups? So I commend this idea to you of thinking about, don't just imagine abstractly, who am I trying to reach? Find a real person or make up a person that at least gives you a way to, step inside their shoes. And I think, am I still here? Mm-hmm. Okay. So the most fundamental thing I would say about social media is it's all about the content. Sometimes people pick a platform before they have something to say on it, or they decide, I'll put announcements on Twitter, or I'll put this over there without any idea of, are those the people I'm trying to communicate with? It's fundamentally about what you are already saying. So it's not just your choice of platform. You have to think about, what's the right platform for the groups I'm trying to meet? Maybe your whole congregation is always on Facebook. Well, use Facebook to talk to them, but maybe or engage with them, but maybe there are other audiences you want to reach that aren't using Facebook. It's not just the timing of your posts, although that matters. You have to understand, when do the people you're trying to reach actually interact with the tool, or you might miss them entirely. And it's not just about how many followers you have. Don't get caught in, if something's viral and reaches 3,000 people, then it's a success. Well, you may be in a 80-member congregation where success would really be that 5 people you'd never met before actually showed up. That is a bigger deal than 3,000 people clicking like on a video. But the fundamental thing that I want to say is you are content generators. Congregations are full of things to say. You gather to hear them. You gather to say them. You gather to act them out. So you are already content generators. The question is, how do you share it in multiple ways? We're masters of sharing it from a microphone on Sunday morning, maybe even masters of putting it in the newsletter for the congregation, masters of saying it sometimes to the local media. But do you need a new tool to say something to someone else? Content is the most important thing, and here's my little example for that. I want you to just imagine, what could UU World's most visited article on our website be? What kind of thing could it be? This is now, based on 10 years of website data, our most popular piece of content, seen more times than anything else we've published, is this feature article from 2007 on Carolyn McDade and the hymn Spirit of Life. To me, that says that something that goes right to the heart of why you are gathered, that says something fundamental about who you are, that tells your story, that can actually be the most compelling thing you've got going. You don't have to come invent some other kind of, do this over here. Do what you're doing and share it using the tools that are now available. I might just point to these things. Quality matters, just not in the way you think. It's not necessarily the best written. It's not necessarily the most brilliant. It's about the quality of the feeling evoked in the reader. I mean, this is true when you go to church on Sunday. If the sermon gets inside you, that's why you come back, and that's what you would actually want to tell someone else. We're moving to what gets seen and shared, right? Okay. So now we're going to tell you a little bit about some of the things, or give you some examples of some of what we have done with some of our content. Now, I make a print magazine, right? Articles, pictures, and all of that. When we had to start thinking as a magazine, how are we using social media? One of the things that we learned right away was it's really hard to put a paragraph into social media and have people jump on that, right? Magazines are great. You take them on the bus, you take them on the plane, you take them to the beach, you take them to the bathroom, but they're harder to share. So one of the things that we learned was we really needed to know how to find a single sentence or a single image in one of our stories and say, this gets right at the heart of what this story was conveying. And so we started making some shareable graphics. This was a statement that Meg Riley wrote, and we published, I think, a year and a half ago. We are buried up to our necks in a history of violence and brutality against people of color. I refuse to be silent anymore. And we put that with a Creative Commons image of a Black Lives Matter protest, and this was our most widely shared piece of content on Facebook. And the numbers up here are interesting because 51,000 people saw this on Facebook. Only 1,367 people came and read the article on our website. And we learned some interesting things about that too. Sometimes when you boil down your content into a single sentence, the distilled version of it, that's the complete message. Someone's going to get that. That's what they got. So knowing that, we include, our logo is down quietly in the corner on the left. We have a reference to who said this. But we knew the message is the message. It's not an advertisement to come over and get more of our message. We hope that happens too. But that was interesting. So this is the serious version. Some of you may have seen this. I'm going to play a little video for you. This is another way of using social media. Technology is changing, and so is UU World Magazine. Today, I'm excited to introduce our all-new mobile-optimized website. Check it out. Your sharing tools stay right there for you. The text is nice and easy to read, and everything scales down neatly for your phone. Hi, I'm Chris Walton, editor of UU World Magazine, which celebrates liberal religion and the people it inspires. We've completely rebuilt our website so that it adapts elegantly to whatever device you use, with bigger graphics, a simpler, uncluttered layout, and easy-to-read text. It works on your smartphone, it works on your Kindle Fire, your iPad, your Android tablet. I just tweeted a story. Now you can read our online weekly news coverage, our online columnists, and 10 years worth of UU World articles on any device wherever you are, even on an airplane. We're even adding an editor's blog so we can provide updates and recommendations throughout the week. Why are we rolling out this amazing new website? Because liberal religion and the people it inspires have great stories, and we want to make sure that everyone has access to them, in print, on your computer, and now on your phone. Visit the new uuworld.org and share it with your friends. So that was really fun to make. And part of what was interesting in doing this little project was actually finding a dedicated UU with professional skills to help us put something like that together. And he coached me and said, you're going to have to ham this up just a little bit to make it fun. And that was instructive too. It's like, okay, if you want to make a little video, get someone who knows what they're doing and have them help you trim it down, because it takes a long time to write a short sentence, let's see. And I think that's enough of me. So we're going on to Jill.
Thanks, Chris. I love that video. So we're going to peel back behind the UUA social media curtain a little bit and talk a little bit about what has been seen and shared UUA-wide. And really, again, what we're kind of going back and forth on and talking about is really what is evoking emotion for people? What is inspiring people that enough to like it, to comment on it, and to share it? So this first graphic I'm presenting here was a Memorial Day prayer, and the content that we got it from was from our Skinner House Books, publishing house for the UUA. And, again, I think Memorial Day in general is a very emotional holiday, and we really wanted to tap into the feelings that people are experiencing and share that. And so that one did really well for us. I think it reached 66,000, and just for reference, the number of likes we have to our page is around 45,000. So again, not fixating on likes, because reach, which is really more important in terms of who sees your stuff, you can surpass how many you like, and it will obviously garner more likes in theory. So moving on to the next one is, again, we knew this was coming. It's Mother's Day message, and we got this content from the UUA's Worship Web. If you're not familiar with it, you should really check it out. There's a ton of great content about prayers and meditations and reflections from all kinds of voices within our movement. And so we shared this message about All Who Mother from Victoria Weinstein, and we coupled it with a picture of a mother and baby elephant. And I'll just say right now, baby animals, very popular. They have They evoke a lot of emotion. So anytime we can pepper a baby animal in there, we get it. But these, again, examples are things that we know are coming. So if you're doing social media for your church, your congregation, your organization, I really strongly encourage you to put a calendar together. It can be as simple as establishing a Google Calendar that you share with the other people who are building content and plot out what you know is coming. I mean, these holidays, they come every year, guys. So you can be prepared for them, and that is always so great. Again, sort of speaking to the emotional piece, but also to the timely piece. So where you can build that in, Sarah she wants to add something.
I just want to add, for the holidays, many of your congregations are also preparing worship services for them. So find that reading or that quote, something that you have the copyright permissions to use, and turn it into this kind of content.
So yeah, it's I don't want to say it's easy, but it's doable. It's absolutely doable. So this one, again, it's a little hard and dark to see. The graphic says, "Hands up, don't shoot." This was in response to Ferguson. And so this example, again, so we sort of have the ones we know are coming, holidays, major events, and then there are things that, as the UUA, we want to respond to events that are happening in the world that are going to resonate with our audiences and that people want to hear from us. So my office also works on presidential statements. So this, we took a statement from UUA President Peter Morales, and we coupled it with a graphic that we got on. Chris mentioned Creative Commons. When you're thinking, hey, where do I find all these beautiful free images that I don't have to worry about copyright? If you go to Flickr and then it's called Creative Commons within Flickr, they have a ton of really great images that you can use that you're not going to get into any copyright trouble with. So this was our most popular post ever until, unfortunately, Charleston happened. And this post was, last I checked it was 130,000 people reached. And again, for reference, 45,000 likes is what we have on Facebook specifically. So, and it doesn't always have to be bad news that we're responding to. I'm trying to think, did anything happen today that might have been a good news? Anything? No? Well, Well, so SCOTUS, we knew, the interesting thing about that one is we knew it was coming, we just didn't know when. So we did some advanced prep. We were prepared for it, thank goodness. And it couldn't have come at a better time. I mean, celebrating with everybody here around GA, I mean, we just, this seemed so poignant and so serendipitous. So, sharing good news and taking the moment to celebrate the win and the victory, equally as important as to take a moment to be reflective and prayerful when something very tragic happens. Moving on, you don't always have to have voices from the institution. It doesn't always have to be, your messenger doesn't always have to be, say, your minister or your board president. They can be voices within your movement, within your church, and you may want to tap into those. So one example that we recently shared was from a UU young adult named Savannah Hemming. She wrote an article on exojane.com, which is a women's voices issues website, and she did a sort of her experience with abstinence-only education in suburban Virginia, and also simultaneously receiving Our Whole Lives sex ed in her local UU church. And it's a beautiful article, and it was shared very widely. And it's just this idea of, one, it's great PR for us because we obviously very strongly support OWL, and we think everyone should go through it. And also just to bring new voices forward, young voices obviously is always great. So, one interesting thing about this, so we changed the picture actually from the article, which was a banana with a condom on it, because we were thinking about our audience, and we were like, oh, I think some people may not like this. I thought it was a great image, but we were like, let's let's maybe PC it up a bit. And so we just added this stock photo of a semicircle of chairs. And when I was going through looking at who had shared it and what comments had made, Savannah Hemming, the author, wrote, "Oh my goodness, the UUA shared my article." And one of her friends commented, "Yeah, but they changed the picture." So I'm gonna burn through a couple more here. But this next one, just again, you can, when you're thinking about your goals and what you want to achieve, you can think about what do you want people to do? Is it enough just to listen and maybe learn and reflect, or do you really want them to do something? And social media is a great way to make people do things. And one thing we wanted them to do was influence in Arkansas. Governor Hutchinson had on his desk a bill to sign, HB 1228, which was an LGBT discriminatory bill. And we didn't want him to sign it, surprisingly. And so we really wanted to kind of galvanize our audience and make it, and along with other businesses, Walmart made a statement. We wanted them to not, we wanted him to not sign it. So we put this graphic together that said, "Please veto this bill. We don't stand on the side of love of this issue, of this bill, and we stand on the side of love of LGBTQ people everywhere." And it was shared widely, and he didn't sign it. So again, this is, we do, with UUA, we do Facebook and Twitter simultaneously. So anything we share on Facebook, we also share on Twitter. But these are Facebook examples largely because they present better. So again, another thing was around the Nepal earthquakes, and again, sort of under the idea of what do we want people to do. Sometimes it's when a disaster strikes, we want them to give money so that we can help support people in need. So we did a joint fund with UUSC and the UUA, and it didn't stop there. We then followed up with a post about how much money we raised, how much money we still need, how that money is being used, and what people can do to get involved. So that's really an example of how do we build that arc and with your story, and again, the idea of following up with people and letting them know how their money is being used is so vital and so important. So again, I mentioned a lot of, I showed a lot of graphics, and a lot of you might be thinking, I'm not a graphic design person, my background is in classics, what do I do? And there's a lot of great free tools out there, GIMP, Canva, PinkMonkey, and Pixlr. Now, despite their weird and awkward names, they're free and really easy to use tools to build your own graphics. And I personally use Canva, and what I love about it is it says, making a Facebook post, making a Facebook cover photo, here's a template, and you can just plug in your logo, your message, your picture, and it's super easy. So I strongly recommend you all play around with those and use them on your own social media platforms. I'm going to pass it back to Jen.
Thanks, Jill. Okay, so this is what it looks like on the back end of the Standing on the Side of Love Facebook administrators page. So how many of you manage a Facebook page for your congregation? Okay, all right, so a good number of you. And how many of you have sort of played around on the back end and looked at your analytics before? Okay, so you have sort of a general idea. There is so much there, and Facebook does, keep adding tools continuously. So this just gives you an idea. This was from 2 weeks ago, and so you'll see that most of these posts sort of have an average number there, and then there's one post that's really sort of skyrocketed, and that was a post that we had about the brutal police assault on young teenage kids in McKinney, Texas. And that sort of served as like breaking news for a lot of people. And the Standing on the Side of Love Facebook page, we know that especially for millennials, Facebook is a primary news source. And so our page sometimes is like where people learn about breaking news. So this just kind of shares or shows what the sort of back end looks like that. And it can be really informative to play around and look at, sort of lightly monitor, right? You all probably do a lot more with your lives besides just manage a Facebook page. So it can be very time consuming, but it can also be worth it to see, are you posting a lot of things that no one's really engaging with, and are you posting some things that a lot of people are engaging with? So maybe you want to spend a little bit more time with where your people are and sort of meeting your audience with what their needs are. And this just shows a little bit more about the McKinney, Texas Post, some of the analytics there, and I will go through this just a little bit quicker so we can get through to the end. This was kind of a fun post. This really surprised us how many people this reached and how high of an engagement this was. This was a post about a planned protest in front of a mosque in Arizona. And the fun thing that we learned there and what kind of happened in the comments section, we learned that there are a lot of Standing on the Side of Love activists that also identify as bikers. And so there was this whole sort of community that started forming of folks who, were talking about biking on the side of love. And I'm not talking about bicycles, I'm talking about motorcycles, right? So that was kind of fun to see people really that's what happens online on social media, that people find community. And we didn't think that there was such a big love contingent on motorcycles, and apparently there is. So that was something kind of fun we learned there. Now we're going to switch gears a little bit. Hashtags do apply to both Facebook and Twitter, but they originated with Twitter, and so I'm going to sort of segue into Twitter a little bit more here. So why do hashtags matter? They really matter because they can start conversations and they can bring you into conversations. So we do a lot specifically with Standing on the Side of Love around specific news, around specific events, public witness, advocacy. So it really matters for us when we're doing live tweeting, what are the other hashtags that people are using? We can sort of create our own hashtags, right? And that's helpful sometimes, but if we're only using our own hashtags, it's kind of like being in a conversation with yourself, right? And that's not all that effective. So if you want to be in conversation with other people and see what else is happening, in your community, you have to know what other hashtags folks are using. Oh, so this is kind of fun. Sometimes when you do live tweeting, so all of these have a typo in them. They all, if you actually look at them, they have sort of their own big, these are 3 of our main issues there. They have, misspelled hashtags have their, surprisingly, a lot of posts on those as well. But, you want to be part of the main conversation and not the typo conversation, so just something to think about there. So I think this is a really fun example from All Souls Unitarian in Washington, D.C. And that hashtags are more than, what you can fit in 140 characters, right? Hashtags help to tell a story and they help to tell your story. So All Souls Unitarian, after exactly 2 years ago, when the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act, that really sort of lit a fire under this congregation to get re-engaged in voting rights work because Reverend James Reeb was an associate minister there. And so they formed a congregational-wide group called the Reeb Project. And so they've done a ton of work related to this, and so they use hashtag Reeb Project when they're doing this work. And so they've gone to North Carolina, they've been a part of the Moral Mondays movement. And so this hashtag is about the story of what's happening on the ground, and they're using that to tell the story online. So it's a lot more than just a hashtag, right? It's telling the story of what they're really doing. So it's important to research your hashtags. Sarah has some good websites up here, hashtags.org, hashtagify.me, that's a funny word. I would also suggest that you find out who are the leaders in your community who are online, and follow them and follow who they are following, and then use the hashtags that they're using, right? Because that's how you enter a conversation effectively. Up on top are some of the hashtags that we sort of regularly use, if you want to jot those down, if you want to be part of those conversations.
But I can clarify, I did a little research, and immigration reform has a ton more hits than immigration justice. And marriage equality has a lot more than freedom to marry. So if you do your research either on one of those websites or on Twitter, you can see what's the most popular terminology that other people are using to talk about your issue.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so this is a really good example. There's a lot of really sad examples of how corporations have tried to use social media and really failed. So sadly, this was around after the Ray Rice incident, and there was a lot of people sort of insensitively asking why his fiance stayed. And women took to Twitter with the hashtag #WhyIStayed, and they were telling their own stories, right? So unfortunately, DiGiorno's Pizza just sort of entered the conversation without knowing what was happening, right? And that would be kind of akin to if Sarah and I were having a conversation and you kind of just like, elbowed your way in and butted in and just sort of started participating in the conversation without knowing the context, right? It doesn't work well in real life, and it doesn't work well online either. So, here are some examples of women who shared their stories, and it was really important what these women were saying, and it's really a fail for corporations when they do this. It's really a fail for us if we do it too, if we, butt into conversations and not really know what's the context is, what's happening. Okay, so a pro of hashtags is they can get you seen. So is anyone tweeting over these few days using hashtag #UUAGA? Yeah. Yeah, that is really frustrating. That happens a lot when we least... I'm sorry. You want me to repeat?
Or I can.
Yeah.
She just said that there's reception problems with connectivity. So sometimes when we try to tweet at the convention center, it doesn't get out.
Yeah, that happens a lot, unfortunately. We've had some really beautiful plans for social media for really big witness events, and then we get there, and there's 80,000 people who also want to tweet at the same time, and so we run into the same problem. So just like in real life, sometimes you have to roll with it, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. Yeah, I know, it is frustrating. But the conversation is still happening, so sometimes when you get reception, and it can be sort of interesting, I think, to go back after an event and sort of look back and remember all the things that happened, and some of the things that happened that you missed, in other workshops, all the places that you wanted to clone yourself and be in 10 places at once. And for the people who weren't able to make it to GA, who are home, who can follow along, I think that's really important too. We're making it a little more democratic with social media. Hashtags help to tell a story. So last year, our theme was Love Reaches Out, and Storify is a really great resource for going back and looking at a series of tweets. It sort of storifies what happens, and you can follow along. I mean, you can do this just by looking at a hashtag on social media. You can follow along the story, and Storify is a really great tool to sort of have it condensed into one place and be able to follow along there. And so we just changed this a few hours ago. This Chalice Point said, when the Supreme Court rules on marriage, what is our hashtag going to be? And today, the Supreme Court ruled on same-sex marriage. So we're using Just Marriage as part of what we're tweeting about. And Just Marriage is an event that's going to be coming up in a few weeks where in 48 hours, we're going to try to have 51 marriages in all 50 states plus DC. So be sure to follow along with Just Marriage. Yeah.
Why not 2 years?
Oh.
That was considered.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good... Oh, yes. The question was, why not 2 U's in Just Marriage? And that's a good question. I know Audra was part of that conversation.
Yeah. I work right next to Audra Friend, who did a lot of research on the hashtags, and it looks like a typo to people who don't already know us.
Yeah.
So that you could also tag something hashtag UU or hashtag UUA and hashtag Just Marriage as well. Yeah. So now I will take over. So just a few quick things about other sorts of shareable media, things that get seen and shared. Blogs. blogs get seen and shared a great deal through social media. They are posted on the blog, but then they are amplified by people using the share button to share them. So this is a blog with some nice relevant information about GA here in Portland, Oregon, telling us that it's going to be hot and all of those good things. And then if you scroll down on it and you press a button to share it on Facebook, something like this comes up, and you can say something about it at the top and then decide who can see it, and then share the link. So what you want to do if you're creating a blog and you want to make it be able to be seen and shared, you want to have a good graphic that's going to be eye-catching, or a couple good graphics that you can choose from on Facebook or on Twitter so that it'll show up when it is shared. Primarily, this is an issue with Facebook. And sometimes blogs do this in funny ways. I wrote a blog about websites for the Growing UU blog, and it had just this giant image of my face when it was shared. And that's not, I would have much rather have it had an image of a website, because that's what the article was about. But I didn't put in an image of a website. I just wrote the thing, and there was a tiny little picture of me at the bottom. And since that was the only picture, turned it into a giant picture of my face. So be strategic in what you have as your images in blogs. Also, in terms of your content, if you're writing a blog or something that you want to be shared, this is what studies show. The BuzzSumo and OK Dork blog put this together. All content gets an average number of, say, about 7,500 shares. But if something is phrased as a list, it makes it a lot more shareable. You see the top 10 ways to deal with such and such, or the 7 reasons why your marriage is in trouble. Those kinds of things. People want to share that. Also, infographics. Those are shared even more. So if you can turn your message into an infographic, and I'll show you an example of that.
That's kind of good news for all of our social science and engineering minds, and infographics can really work.
As long as the infographic doesn't have integrals or other things like that.
Yeah,
also,
pair up your graphic designers and your engineers.
Right. Like how-to articles. Like you can turn your sermon about the spiritual life, edit it so it's like how to live a spiritual life in 7 easy steps, and turn your main points into those steps, and then it becomes a lot more shareable. And what posts, why posts, what your wife isn't telling you, that's that kind of thing is very popular. Or why dogs always know when you're upset. That's popular. And videos. But I'm thinking about the lists and the infographic, and we have a couple of good examples of UU content in that. This is like the most shared infographic ever for UUism, it seems. It's gone viral in non-UU settings among other religious groups. Coffee Hour Caution. It was prepared by our Youth and Young Adult Ministries office a few years ago, and it has had a few bumps of viral activity over time. Things like avoid saying, "How old are you?" Say instead, "What did you think of the service today?" Things like that people can identify with. And then we also have an example from the Huffington Post. Marilyn Sewell, who's a retired minister of First UU in Portland, she created an article, Top 10 Reasons We Don't Talk About Climate Change. And immediately, it was so much more successful than, say, an article that said, we have a hard time talking about climate change. The top 10 reasons, it inspires a kind of curiosity. And I would be very curious to know if this is something that Marilyn had preached or a speech that she had given, and she had in mind that a list is something that people share a lot more. Top 10 reasons is the most popular number for lists, but the second most popular number is 23. So if the sermon that you're trying to boil down into something nicely shareable has 23 points, you've got good luck. And also, interestingly, blogs and articles that are 3,000 words or longer get shared with a high amount of frequency, because I often think about cutting content down to share it on social media, but if it's written in a long-form site, like a blog site or an article site like Huffington Post, longer is better in terms of sharing. So I'm gonna skip through the next few slides. These are just some lovely images from congregations and some of the things that they've shared. We're gonna have time for questions in just a moment. Please hold on. Jill will give us a philosophical summary. Thank you.
It's not going to be philosophical, so you're welcome. So I just wanted to, again, here's another quote from Rollo May, a psychologist and author. Communication leads to community. That is to understanding, intimacy, and mutual valuing. And I think that's a big reason we're here today. And really, what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish. So here's a little also for-profit speak, just for you. And, again, businesses are doing this, and they're doing this well, and some more than others. DiGiorno, fail. We can learn a lot from that. We talk about building our brand, and I know branding is sometimes, especially for UUs, it's a negative word. They don't like it. But Unitarian Universalism, I hate to say it, guys, there is a brand identity to it. And when you proclaim that Unitarian Universalism, you are claiming that brand, and you are saying, this is me, this is my tribe, and you should be a part of that because we share the same values. So, we want to talk about it, we want to share the word, and we want other people who identify with that, who it resonates to come on board, right? So we're really trying to communicate our identity with authenticity and integrity, and hopefully to inspire others to join us. So again, brand loyalty, right? We call it UU Pride, but you're our most loyal, brand people. I mean, that you guys came and paid a lot of money and took time out of your day, your week, to come here and to celebrate with us and to worship with us. And you are, and that's pride. That is UU pride. It takes a lot, and there are different aspects of your identity that you are loyal to. Again, sort of, your Apple products. You identify with the brand of Apple, and you want to celebrate that and you want to share that. So again, we want to kind of create and grow that level of pride. Another one is integrated marketing. Chris talked a lot about sort of identifying your audience, and for a lot of people, print magazine is where they read UU World articles, but they wanted to reach different audiences, so the web presence and social media. And we want to meet people where they are too. And so you want to integrate your marketing, meaning that you want your social media and your website and maybe your e-newsletter to all be speaking the same message, have the same message, be consistent, be coherent, so that no matter where someone finds you, whether it's church service on Sunday or on your social media page, that it's consistent and it'll hopefully resonate with them and inspire them to join or be a part of that. So I'm going to pass it back to Sarah.
So you have a lot of opportunities for developing your own content, but you also have a lot of opportunities for sharing other good UU content. And you're probably already familiar with a number of these outlets. We just wrote down some that we think are very valuable to be able to share and proclaim in a UU voice. The ones that are represented here, also Skinner House Books and the Blue Boat blog and Facebook and Twitter from the Youth and Young Adult Office at the UUA. Church of the Larger Fellowship does some fantastic UU social media. The UU Media Collaborative on Facebook is all kinds of wonderful designers and media-focused people from all over the US, Canada, even beyond, who are doing UU social media work and sharing images and graphics. UU blogs, Huffington Post, several UUs blog on that. Patheos is also a faith-based blog that features UU blogs regularly. And I also recommend just following and liking a variety of UU congregations and seeing what their content is and amplifying their messages and sharing it when it's not just specific to their place and their people. We also have a number of resources you can find on the UUA website. UUA.org/communications has social media, website, and mailing list tips. And last year we had workshops on Facebook, Twitter, video, websites, and also reaching out to the nuns, the religiously unaffiliated, that are part of the UU's Get Social section within communications. And you can find videos and slides for all of those workshops. So this is about, what this really comes down to is about sharing our love, about being UU out loud, about promoting what we hold true deeply in our hearts, making that accessible to other people as they see us living our principles, and just really letting our light shine. So we encourage you to get social online and in person, and this is also that our faith may transform lives, and as we have seen today in great evidence that we take part in transforming the world, may our actions make it so. So we have a time for questions and answers. Many questions are appropriate for your individual situation, but I'd like for folks to focus on what is something that's common for everyone here to be able to learn together. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for your workshop today. I'm Diana Ott. I'm from First Church in Louisville. My question is about best practices around events and publicizing events on social media, if you have any tips for us.
My advice is to really think in terms of those different audience groups. I mean, if you think about a postcard campaign to people in your own congregation, well, you know their mailing addresses and they may put it on their fridge. You could announce it on Twitter, but that's probably not actually an effective way of reaching that many people. But there are things like Facebook events. If you build the event with a compelling graphic where the event on Facebook is exciting to share, people are more likely to click that they're going and for their friends to see it. But you know, when you're marketing an event, you're thinking in terms of multiple ways of doing it. You know, get a notice in the newspaper, put a poster up around town, get something out that people can share with their friends. You might even just do a focus group in your congregation. How do you hear about the things that you go to? And you'll discover some interesting methods that way.
Hi, my name is Lonnie Mosley. I'm from the Berkeley Church in California, and I wanted to ask you about the Carolyn McDade Spirit of Life video that you said that you had so many responses. Do you connect to the people who do Facebook in the congregations so that we would know a particular video had that kind of reach, and then we as managers or Facebook people could, you know, link to that, pull our own people in? If you're finding that it's, you know, incredible for you, then it would be incredible for other UUs, and we could just tie in to you a little bit better. So would you consider sharing?
That's actually a great idea. We do something sort of like that, but I've never thought of, you know, really promoting it in that particular way. So UU World does have a weekly email newsletter, and one of the things that I try to do every week is put in a piece of our content from the magazine's archives. Usually what I select are things that have continued to be popular. Sometimes I'll dig something up because I think, I can't believe no one really read this the first time. But usually I do pick, you know, favorites. And so that's a good place to see, oh yeah, that there was something back in 2009 that really speaks to me. And it's still, that's the great thing about the internet, is really old stuff. People have no idea it's old. Looks good to them right now.
Exactly.
First of all, some gratitude. Thank you so much for your professional presentation and audiovisuals. We can see, we can hear you, and providing us with useful tools to get the word out. Specific questions that I have, I was at Kerry McDonald's presentation, and he started an email list so that as soon as the links to your PowerPoint presentation became available, he said he'd send us the information so we could hook up right away, and I'm wondering if that's possible for this as well.
It'll take a little bit longer with this. Carrie's presentation was in Prezi. And Prezi, all the Prezis have an online link that you can just share.
Mm-hmm.
This was in Microsoft PowerPoint. So we have to upload it to the uua.org, and I'm not exactly sure when that is going to be able to take place. But if you'd like to have something ASAP, just come up afterward and we'll write your name down.
And the other question I had is, do you have webinars available, or do any of you come around to different UU communities and give presentations or work personally with the congregations? I'm just curious about that.
Well, it's something that we have, our regional staff are doing a lot of the work in congregational services, and our outreach staff are working to equip more congregational life staff in the regions to do some of this work. And some of our regional staff, like Beth Casebolt has, in the Central East Regional Group, has been doing a lot of web work and social media work and has prepared videos online and such things. So I'd say talk to your region and tell them you're interested and see what can happen.
Perfect, thank you.
We also have a webinar through Standing on the Side of Love that we did back in January with Groundswell, so specifically focusing on online advocacy, because that's kind of what we do with the campaign. So if that's something in particular that you're interested in, we have a really good webinar with some interfaith partners on the Standing on the Side of Love website. And we do have a handful of other webinars specifically with social media too, if you dig around a little bit. Yeah.
Thank you.
And the UU filmmaker who made my little video earlier actually does do those trainings in a freelance way, and his name is Peter Bowden, and he does have material online and does workshops.
Yeah, if you look up uuplanet.org or com, uuplanet.org or com, it has this stuff.
Okay, Jean Gonzalez, Yakima, Washington, and we're a small church, limited, very limited staff, and of course never enough volunteers. We have a Facebook page with many, many likes from all over, a Facebook group with a much smaller number. Can you talk about the relative merits of having one or the other or both for churches?
Yeah, great question. I recommend pages for sort of the broader audience, so people who might just, again, sort of be interested in learning about your church, but who also people who are all over and may never visit. I recommend groups for maybe your members or people you specifically want to target maybe more insider information for. The way Facebook used to be, you could only be a group, and then they moved everyone more to pages. So the UUA was a group that was moved over to a page. So you need to balance, again, based on your goals and your audiences, what is best for you. But they both have merits. But again, sort of more of the outward facing, we recommend the page. It's a little bit less of a barrier to entry because people can just automatically like, whereas mostly with groups you have to either be invited to join or asked to join, and then an administrator has to go in and accept your invitation.
What about having both with the same organization?
Yeah, I think both, again, based on your own merits, I think both makes a lot of sense. So I think you just need to look at what you can manage with your volunteers, but more is always better.
Yeah, and this may not be as applicable because you said that you have a sort of smaller congregation, but for congregations that are a little bit larger and you have different audiences that might want to have their own Facebook group pages. My home congregation, we have a really active young adult Facebook group page that is constantly used and updated. Maybe your choir wants to have a Facebook group page, your Justice Action Committee, whatever, so that might be really useful for like different segments of your congregation as well.
Hi, my name is Samantha Logan from First Unitarian Society of Denver. Outside of my congregation, I have a lot of experience in social media. I used to work for Constant Contact, which is a massive email marketing and web platform. So I know a lot about social media. And for my personal organization, we wrote up social media policy running so that we could engage advocates, make our community into an advocate, and they felt a lot more comfortable posting on our social media page, giving us content. But I kind of worry about what limitations and what issues might occur if we transfer a social media policy that is very engaging and very open from an organization into a congregational standpoint. And I was wondering what guidelines you might have, what limitations you might expect, and what you think would be most important to put into a social media policy when congregations go to draft them.
Well, I would encourage you to check out uua.org/communications, because there are some sample social media policies there and some other guidelines. I don't think any of us individually is an expert on that.
Well, what you'll find is sort of a policy around commenters, specifically, how to maybe when it's appropriate to take something down. And we tend to, from the UUA social media, we tend to not have a policy, largely because it's kind of ever changing, right? It's changing all the time. Best practices are changing, and so we don't want to spend too much time writing a policy that isn't going to be flexible and changeable. For your congregation, there might be very good reasons to have a policy, and it sounds like you already have one that you might want to use to adapt. And it really just depends on the congregation, what they're comfortable with and what makes sense for them. But yeah, typically we try not to set too many things in stone because we want to be adaptable and flexible based on changes.
Hi, I'm Sally Carroll from the UU Fresno in California. This is actually a comment. One tool which you did not mention for images is UU stock photos on Flickr. I don't know how many they're up to, hundreds at least, of photos that are volunteered by photographers that you can have free use of, usually with attribution.
Great. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's a lovely group. If you are using it, make sure to read the information about the group, because it does say some things about permission, like if you do need permission of some of the human subjects, particularly if they're minors, even if it's shared in the group. So make sure you read all the details before downloading one of those photos, but there's a great collection there.
I am Kwame James from the Harbor Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Muskegon, Michigan. And this might be too specific a question for, I don't know, but maybe other people have come across this sort of thing too. We have, from before my time as the sort of publicity chairperson for our committee, we have a Facebook profile for our congregation, as well as a Facebook page. And unfortunately, it's the profile that has the most activity, and we have to transition to a Facebook page. But I wonder if you have any tips on how to make that switch expeditiously without losing too many people.
Be prepared to be very disappointed.
Okay.
Because Facebook gives a lot of preferential treatment to profiles, but they want profiles to be individual people. Mm-hmm. And what you'll notice when you make that switch over to your page is that Facebook automatically depresses the number of people that can see your page's posts by a lot. Only 16% or so of your audience will see any individual Facebook post. That's because Facebook wants you to pay for advertising for your page. Okay. So one of the things that it makes you have to think about is a profile gets to see everything that everyone posts who's connected to it. So a profile is profoundly relational. Mm-hmm. A page is not relational. You only see the way people engage with the page itself. And that's really daunting. But the opportunity that it opens up is that a page does give you some options that a profile doesn't. You can schedule posts in certain kinds of ways. You have access to more analytical tools. And the one thing that you might think about with the page is, why not try posting a version of the same message at different times during the day or on different days of the week and see if you get engagement from different people? Because sometimes you will. Some people won't see it the first time, but will see it the second time. And it's, businesses or magazines or other groups are doing that all the time. There is an option on Facebook to actually convert a profile into a page, but then you would end up with 2 pages because you already have an existing page. So you might have to think about, do we want to shutter the one and just convert the other one into the page, or say to all of your friends, we're over here now, come join us again, and lose some of them. It's actually a really tricky dilemma.
Okay, thanks.
We are over time, but we'll take one more question.
Yes, my name is Craig Sear, Edmonds, Washington. I was interested to hear your story about your high school friend who discovered Unitarianism. I mean, just a fabulous story. And we had a situation. I mean, our whole goal is visibility and to try and reach the communities of people that don't know about Unitarianism. So one story for us is one of a member of ours was at the state capitol and just kind of accidentally sent out a tweet about a hearing that was happening. Here's the streaming link. It was about an LGBT issue, and the streaming link got picked up by an LGBTQ organization, and this member suddenly had hundreds of followers just because there were so many people that just were so thankful to get this little piece of information. Yeah. So I'm curious, do you ever, which platform is better for reaching communities that don't know about Unitarian Universalism, or does it just matter on the kind of content that you're providing?
I would say using hashtags and Twitter, if you're really trying to reach a much broader audience, that's your best bet. Mm-hmm. I would say Facebook primarily speaks to people who like your page and who then will comment or share on it, and that's how their friends might see it. So if you're looking to go as broad as possible, I would definitely say Twitter. But again, it really depends on what your goal is and who your audience is. Anything else?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I was going to say.
Great. Closing? Do you want to close?
Yeah.
Skip it? Yeah.